The only problem with this is that you really put your units at risk if you bring them with you, and you really have to make sure that you don't, lose a whole bunch of crap, because otherwise it just makes it so much worse for your disadvantage that you already have now, because they can always just run to the back of your base and start beating on crap again. So, the more skeletons they have, the worse it is for you. And once again, the great thing about the Dark Ranger as the Night Elf player is that you don't even need units with you. I mean, he's at 28 food and he's making the Undead run away with a whole bunch of ghouls. Well, a whole bunch is 2 to me, I guess. Retard. Okay, so Jesus. Also, he's kind of got a hero advantage. Once you hit level 5, it's pretty much over for anything that wants to get away from the Dark Ranger's bodybuilding of power. And yes, I did call skeletons bodybuilding, because, something dies and it just builds a skeleton that is a complete replica of every other skeleton, no matter what dies. So yes, I call the Dark Ranger the bodybuilder. She is pretty butch. Anyways, also as the Undead player, a good thing that I would do is that you use your ghouls just to run into the opponent's base and beat on a whole bunch of their tier 2 units, and possibly a whole bunch of their wisps. This way, if you make them cancel a building, then they're out like at least 50 wood, and then they're kind of screwed because they have to build more wisps that you've killed with your ghouls just to be able to get the lumber. So you're kind of putting them out gold and wood at that point. And then while you're doing that, what you do is you use your heroes, like you just attack move with your ghouls until you see them TP or something, and you use your heroes to pretty much focus fire on a whole bunch of their archers and stuff, do a whole bunch of harassment that way. Generally when the first riot comes out, it's kind of downhill from there as far as your advantage goes, especially with your tech. So, at this point, it kind of restricts the areas in which you can battle the Night Elf player. That's what I was trying to think of. I was trying to think of the best way to put that. And really, once you start getting gargoyles, all you can really do is kind of force them into their base and start focus firing on a whole bunch of their wisps. So, I mean, a smart thing that the Night Elf player did is he did get the Shredder, which is kind of interesting. The great thing about the Shredder is that it cuts away a whole bunch of those trees, so that way it's really harder for the gargoyle harassment to occur, and you don't lose wisps, and you can run the thing away. The only problem is it kind of goes down fairly easily because you can't heal it on the moon wells or anything, so it's kind of a pain in the ass that way, but generally you're good. Now, the Night Elf players opted for Priest of the Moon second. Generally, your second hero varies so much, it's kind of ridiculous. So, second hero can range from the Panda to, like, pretty much anything. So, what he's done here is actually gone for a way to synergize with his own army as opposed to completely counter his army, which is what the Panda is for. Panda's a counter, Priestess is synergy. So, it really depends what you're going for. If you're going for mass range, Priest of the Moon is never a bad choice. One thing to note, on Tyrannis Stand as the Night Elf player, you can pretty much build buildings anywhere, and creeps won't really get angry at you for doing so. So, it's a good thing to remember and keep in mind. Also, I find that the Priest of the Moon scout ability is so, awesome that I'm surprised he doesn't get it, and instead he goes for Searing Arrows. So, I kind of recommend going with that, but if you want to go with the damage output with your Priest of the Moon, that's your choice. But I really like the scouting ability, especially because it would prove handy right now, because you can just, kill the Shade. I almost said Ghost. But, that's one thing to point out. As an Undead player, if you kind of have, like, a whole bunch of wood just kicking around from the fact that you were amassing ghouls earlier, build a Sacrificial Pit. You'll be out, like, 150 gold, but it proves so useful, just because you can figure out where to creep check your opponent. You can, like, follow them around for no reason. One thing to realize is that with Dryads, you're not going to be able to do much of a good job with the staff. So even getting a staff is kind of ridiculous until you get 3 heroes, in which case you want to get 3 staffs, and that way you waste a whole bunch of their damage output, because they're, dealing a whole bunch of damage to one unit that really isn't going to die, and then it kind of leaves, especially because it's already done all the damage output. So, as a Night Elf player, if you want to go a tri-hero strategy, your best bet is to use the Dryads and go with a whole bunch of staffs. That way it's just awesome. Also, the Undead player is kind of forced into going Gargs in this case, and possibly Destroyers because of the fact that he went with the Dark Ranger. And the Dark Ranger is perfect for that because, you know, if they do go ghouls, everything's going to die, and it just kind of becomes pointless after that. So right now it's kind of an all-skeleton battle, and really it looks kind of funky, but whatevs. One thing that you do have with your Dryads if you're going to mass Dryads, you might as well get Abolish, right? And with Abolish you get so much damage, it's kind of ridiculous to not use the Abolish on the skeletons, just because A, they lose their meat shield, and you can pretty easily maneuver to their, their second hero, which would happen to be the Lich. And you can pretty much focus them down pretty quickly, and whereas Splinter Spine goes down pretty quickly, so it's always a good idea just to get some better positioning. The only problem is that, the Demon Hunter, I keep doing that. Death Knight can pretty much heal anything from anywhere with its massive range, and I know I said pretty much a lot this replay, but I don't feel like changing my patterns. Anyways, the one thing that you do have with the Dark Ranger that kind of counters that is you do have Silence. The only problem is you run out of mana so quickly that it's almost not worth it to use Silence, because then you won't get any awesome skeletons to beat the crap out of their heroes anyways. So you kind of lose damage output, but you kind of don't at the same time, if you get what I mean. Because, with their Lich gone, your heroes won't get nuked, so you won't have to worry about them as much, and you can still do the damage. So, that's where I was going with that. That's how my mind works. The Undead player is going with an interesting strategy. He has decided to unsummon a crypt. If you're short on cash, always a good idea to unsummon something. But in this case, what he's doing is he's changing up his strategy. And generally, it's kind of a bad thing to change up your strategy. And it's kind of weird that that Wisp lived, even though it got harassed. Which is a good thing that the Night Elf player has done. And I'll talk about that in a second. But, yeah, if you're going to change up your strategy as an Undead player, it kind of makes it's kind of difficult, especially because of how versatile Dryads are. So you really have to be careful as an Undead player as to when you can change up your strategy and when you should or shouldn't change your strategy. Of course, if something isn't working, you might as well change. But if you're going to change your strategy, the best time to do it is when you've got a gold advantage. So that's generally the best time to do it, at least in my opinion. Anyways, one thing that I was going to say, which I kind of stopped in the middle of it, is that Jesus, what was I thinking? Oh, the Undead player hasn't really done much Wisp harassment with his gargoyles. For one reason, the Night Elf player has done a great job of kind of stopping him from actually reaching his base. And the one perfect example of that is his scouting ability, I guess, and the fact that he's a wise player, so, always a good thing to note. One thing that's interesting, I guess, is that he used Frost Nova on the skeletons. I didn't think they gave enough experience to actually be a bother, so, I'm not sure why he did that, but it's kind of weird. I thought I'd point that out. Generally, I wouldn't waste that much, time and effort and mana, especially with the Lich, because he's really the only nuke you have against the Dark Ranger. It just kind of seemed weird to me that he'd do that. So, as a Night Elf player, what you kind of want to do is you want to creep your way to the Undead player's base if you want to stop them from doing ghoul sound it out, little boy. Garg harassments. So what you want to do is you kind of want to creep up to the Merc camp and then creep across the gold mine to their shop and then kind of start harassing their base sexually. And then they're kind of forced back into their base, and then they have to bring their gargoyles with you. Because if you're putting pressure on them, they can't really kill wisps, which isn't really guaranteed. And if they kill your heroes, that's way more guaranteed than, killing something like, I don't know. You get what I mean. I really don't feel like finishing that thought because I kind of forgot where it was going. Because I kind of thought back to the scout thing with the Priest of the Moon, which is also a great idea to follow gargoyles around. And I've used that several times to my advantage. And it's a great thing to do. Just follow their gargoyles around, and then you know when they're going to be at your base anyway, so it's not really a problem. Plus, it's great for your ancient protectors because you can see over the trees